How much longer will it take?
We're going to bury my mother's body and offer flowers, so it might take a few more hours.
What? I can't get to my battle on time. Buried her quickly. What a pain in the ass.
I'll be in the waiting room taking care of the incense, so I don't have to go, do I? It's too much trouble to move from one place to another.
Then I won't go either. The game is about to start.
My name is Sarah, and I'm 26 years old. I just got married last spring, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. My father, who owned a company, died early. I'm a secretary to my mother, who succeeded him as president of the company. My husband Mitchell is 2 years younger than me and 24 years old. He's a motorcycle delivery service provider by trade. We met in our company's office building. I was in the elevator when the door was about to close, and Mitchell came running in it. It was his first day on the job, so he said,
I can't figure out which way to go.
He was running around the building, sweating, because he couldn't find the department he needed. It was a bike delivery that had to be completed in time. I led the health-conscious Mitchell by the hand to his destination. After that, I often saw Mitchell, who seemed to have been assigned to this area. One day, on the way home from work, I stopped by a ramen shop with my colleagues and heard a familiar voice from behind me.
So, you go to this kind of store,
I turned around to see a friendly-looking Mitchell sitting at the counter eating his ramen with his phone in hand. I said hello and said of course I would come. Saying this, I took a seat with my colleagues and placed our order.
I'll take you to a good ramen restaurant next time,
he said to me as I was leaving. After that, he would wait for me in front of the office when I was leaving. We began to eat ramen together again and again. At first, it was just casual conversation, but as we got to know each other better, we began to talk about all sorts of things, including our ages and our personal lives. Perhaps it was because we both grew up in a single-parent households. We became even more intimate with each other, and before we knew it, we were married. It was on our way home from a ramen noodle shop as usual. See you tomorrow. As we were walking to the station, Mitchell suddenly says to me,
I want to introduce you to my mom.
And he invited me to his home. It was already 9 p.m. on the clock after having had dinner at a ramen restaurant. It was late. It's rude at this hour, so shouldn't I go another day? I don't even have a gift for her. I said,
It's okay. My mom wants to see you. She said I can take you anytime. And our house is closed. It's a bit shabby though. So, please come.
Mitchell was very matter-of-fact about it. No, even if you say that, you'll be insane at this hour of the night. Mitchell didn't hear my hesitant reply. He rode his bike and pointed in the direction we were walking. We turned off the main street where the ramen shop was and entered a narrow street. I saw the house with a barn, which is very rare nowadays.
This is our house. Pretty shabby, huh?
Mitchell chuckled as he parked his bike in the grassy yard, opened the poorly made sliding door, and beckoned me to come in. Is it really okay to come at this late hour? I entered the front door with trepidation.
Don't worry, we live in this kind of place. There's no need to be formal.
A woman, Mitchell's mother, came out from the back after hearing our conversation. I greeted her with a reserved hello and said, I'm sorry it's so late. She greeted me with a hesitation and welcomed me as if she had been waiting for me. Mitchell, I'm so glad you finally brought her here. Sarah, is it? Please, come on in. My first impression of Mitchell's mother was that she was loud and talkative. She seemed to have a bit of quirky personality. As soon as I entered the room, Mitchell's mother persistently asked me about my family home. She smiled meaningfully and dug deep. How much are your family's total assets? Will you be able to take over the company in the future? How much is your income now? I was getting tired of being asked so many questions about money. I looked at Mitchell to see if he can help me. He was absorbed in a game with his phone in his hand. He didn't seem to be listening to our conversation at all. I was afraid that she would keep on asking me questions until the world was over. I'm sorry, I have to work early tomorrow. And I left the conversation. If I were to marry Mitchell, would I be able to call her my mother? I was a little worried. His mother, who seemed to be oblivious to my worries, even come to my mother's house to say hello. Even though Mitchell had not yet formally proposed to me, she was trying to get me to be a part of her family, and she was making moves for us to get married. Mitchell's mother's momentum led to our marriage. I was prepared to live with my in-laws with the way my mother-in-law was acting. Surprisingly, we were not forced to live together. We started our new life in a newly built rental apartment. Well, I guess we couldn't even bring in our new furniture in that old house. My mother was also concerned about me moving in with my mother-in-law after the marriage. She was relieved that we got off to an uneventful start. It was when my marital leave ended, and I was returned to work tomorrow. While I was on leave, my mother was working without a substitute secretary. I taught her to be careful when driving, but accidents happen even when we are careful. A phone call from the police reminded me of this. The feeling of coldness all over my body and the voices that sounded like echoes. I took Mitchell, who was playing a smartphone game, by my side. We went to the place where the police told us to go. My mother, who was lying in a dark room at the destination, could not answer me anymore. Unable to accept what was in front of me, I was stood there in a daze. I could neither cry nor scream. Beside her, Mitchell was absorbed in the game without changing a single expression on his face. I could resentfully hear the sound of the game echoing in the silence. Time passed at a hectic pace. The wake was over without any real sense of sadness. The day of the funeral arrived. The funeral for my mother, who was the president of the company, was to be held in the form of a company funeral. The employees willingly divided up the work that needed to be done. They took care of the details and the mourners. I think I got a glimpse of my mother's personality before her death. I should be the good mourner and do my best to live up to my mother's memory. While I was immersed in such thoughts, I noticed that the reception area for mourners was strangely noisy. There shouldn't be any accident at the place where the ceremony was originally held in solemnity. When I turned around to see what was going on, I found an unbelievable scene. To my surprise, employees were helping out. My mother-in-law was in charge of the reception for the mourners. She was looking at the money in the envelope and writing the amount of money under her name. I didn't realize the mourning gift was less than the wedding gift. I thought there would be more, because it was the president's funeral. The employees at the reception desk and those who came to offer condolences were taken aback by this behavior. Some of them are even wondering if they should offer the condolences anymore. How could she embarrass us like this? I ran over to her. How dare you do this? Please stop it right now, I shouted out loud. My mother-in-law didn't seem offended. Sarah, what are you yelling at me for? I went to the trouble of helping you. Isn't that kind of attitude rude? She got mad at me. If I spoke back here, the fuss was bound to get louder because it's something she would do. I swallowed what I wanted to say and only asked her to leave the reception area without further argument. In the meantime, It was time for the prayer to start, and I hurried to take a seat. However, Mitchell was nowhere to be found. One after another, relatives and friends were taking their seats. I was looking for Mitchell, but I found him playing a smartphone game in the corner of the hall. I thought that my mother-in-law and Mitchell were insane, but I had no idea that they had no common sense. I took the phone out of his hand and said, "Hey Mitchell, that's enough." I forced him to stop playing.
Why'd you do that? Give me my phone back.
I silently put the phone in Mitchell's pocket, and I made him take his seat. I made it to the prayer just in time. I took a deep breath and put out the rosary beads I had in my pocket. Mitchell reached into his pocket too. I thought he was going to take out his rosary beads, but what came out was his smartphone. He started to play the game again. During the prayer was being said, I couldn't yell at my husband in front of so many people. I tried to warn him in a whisper, but Mitchell, who was engulfed in the game, could not hear me. During the prayer, Mitchell's phone was the center of attention, which was extremely embarrassing. When it was his time to receive communion, I gave him a gut elbow thrust. There, Mitchell blundered again. After the communion, instead of singing, he began to frantically clap his hands. He returned to his seat with an indifferent look on his face. He seemed to be very serious and did not even know how to behave. When most of the attendees had sat down, Mitchell returned to his seat, this time yawning. Then he asked me,
"How much longer is this gonna take?"
Apparently, he was getting tired of attending this service itself. "I guess it will still be a few hours before we can start the burial with flowers for my mother." Mitchell looked very disgruntled when I answered that.
"I can't get to my bed on time. Bury her quickly. What a pain in the ass."
He said something that sounded insane. Then, even my mother-in-law came over. "I will be in the waiting room taking care of the incense, so I don't have to go, do I? There will be food after the funeral, right? It's too much trouble to move from one place to another." It was a terrible thing to say. Even Mitchell took the bait and said,
"Then I won't go either. The game is about to start."
That's what he said. I didn't know they were this crazy. Isn't it awful against the deceased? Just a few days ago, they became my relatives by marriage. I was so mad that I almost blacked out. Even so, my mother-in-law said, "A funeral right after getting married would be the bad omen. It's going to cost a lot of money to pay for the funeral ceremony. Isn't it a nuisance?" She says this like it's obvious. Are you serious about that? The relatives around us looked at us with a doubtful expression on their faces. Then, the person in charge of the ceremony told us that the flowers had been put away and it was time to have the burial. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I would start cursing the two of them. So I hurried and went to my mother's side. After the funeral, I didn't feel like going back to the new house with Mitchell. I went back to my parents' house because I had to sort out my mother's belongings for a while. The house was quiet after my mother left. When I thought that I would never see her again, I finally realized she had passed away. I put out my old photo albums and soaked in the memories of spending time with my mother. When I woke up the next day, I decided to organize what I could of mementos for my relatives and those who were close to my mother. It probably shouldn't have been done so quickly, but I couldn't stay away from doing something. I couldn't deal with the sudden loss of my mother, much less the fact that my spouse and mother-in-law didn't support me. The shock of my spouse and mother-in-law being such people was too much. I was looking at my mother's belongings one by one. Then the intercom rang. It was Mitchell and my mother-in-law on the monitor. I wondered if they had come to apologize. I opened the front door, and the two of them came into the room as if it was a matter of course. And my mother-in-law put on the beaming face. "I came to help. You're gathering her valuables, right?" Without a single word of apology, they suddenly walked through the house, opening closet doors and sideboard drawers. "What are you doing? Coming here out of the blue?" I yelled at them again for their insane behavior. "What do you mean? We have to keep what we can use, otherwise it will be a waste if we get rid of everything. If we don't hurry up, the buyers will come. If we exchange them for cash, we'll split the inheritance among the family." They rummaged through my mother's luxury clothes and bags. My mother-in-law is excited as if she were putting on a fashion show. "What? What buyers?" "Oh, please, you were going to throw away something you didn't want for free? Even it's $2 or $3, if you don't turn it into money, you lose it. You were busy with the inheritance procedures, so I made arrangements for you." My mother-in-law looked at me as if she loved me. "I didn't ask you to do that. Don't touch her things. How much more insane do you have to be? Please, leave." Then my mother-in-law brazenly said, "I'm going to leave here from today, so there's no need for me to leave, is there? You're going to get this house and all its contents anyway." "What?" I was surprised, but my mother-in-law looked at me blankly and said, "You don't understand why I didn't move in with you and Mitchell? Because I didn't want to have to move so many times. I was going to move in with you if you build your own house eventually. I thought that with the money that you make, you would be able to get it up and run in no time. Thanks to your mother, we got the house ahead of schedule. I should be thanking her. How can she live so selfishly?" Then Mitchell, playing his game, added, "So, that's that. I married you because you seem to make a good salary, and your family is rich." He said that plainly. "Does that mean you're after my fortune?" I asked him.
"Yeah. When I'm rich, I can spend all the money on games. That's what my mom told me. So she said I should definitely get married. She said that she wants to be able to spend as much as she wants to." I was surprised at his answer, which made me question his mental age. "Does that mean that as long as I had money, you would have been happy to marry anyone?" "I guess so."
"Huh? I can't believe you would say that. I feel deeply ashamed that I married such a guy. Are you two making fun of me? Cut it off! Get out of here!" I was sick of seeing their faces and urged them to leave immediately. "Then pay us alimony." I was appalled at how attached she is to money. I would not give a single penny of my mother's wealth to such a person. I'm not kidding. "I'll split the wedding funds 50-50, so I want it to be a super luxury hotel," is what my mother-in-law said, but she still hasn't paid her share for the wedding. My mother-in-law said that she wanted to have a full-course meal at a super luxury hotel. She insisted that the wedding be held at this hotel. When I pointed out to my mother-in-law, who doesn't even try to pay back her debts, but only thinks about receiving gifts, that it's not going to happen, she said, "Why would I pay back when the person to pay is gone now? If you insist on me paying it back, why don't you just set it off against the alimony? If we divide the property, there will still be enough to pay the alimony," she said. I decided to call the police for loitering. When the police arrived, instead of panicking, my mother-in-law told them she was just helping sort out the belongings. While they were arguing, the buyer arrived, and the police interviewed the buyers as well. After confirming that the client was the mother-in-law, the police questioned me, and I told them my mother-in-law sold the belongings without permission. They took my mother-in-law and Mitchell out of my family home. After that, the interview was over. After the interview, My mother-in-law and Mitchell returned to my house without hesitation. "I'll call the police again," I said over the intercom. "I'll never do anything selfish again," they said, and apologized and begged me to let them live here. My mother-in-law and Mitchell ended the lease at their old home, so they had no place to return to, and they even got rid of their clothes and furniture. They told me all they owned was the clothes on their backs. What kind of greedy and brazen mother and son are they? Of course, I had no intention of doing them any favors. The two of them were literally penniless. They had nowhere to go, so they stayed under the eaves of my house for a while. I wonder how long it had been since I saw them being questioned by the police officers patrolling the area. After that day, I never saw them again. I am now remarried to the kind, caring, sensible man who has taken over my mother's business and home. He sees me for who I am, not my background. He is very bright and very dependable in running his company. I have been through some terrible experiences, but I am determined to be as happy as I can be. Of course, I will do this with my husband, who is very kind to me. I hope that one day, when I see my mother again, I will be able to tell her that I have lived a very happy life.